Hello, I'm Tracy Nicholas, and welcome to Folkloring. I am a passionate folklore practitioner, and to me, folkloring is more than just a podcast. It's my commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you.
Hello. Before I start this episode, I wanted to jump on quick and share some exciting news with you. My book, Mind Over Magic, is now available for purchase. In it, I talk about our ideas about magic, and I get into some of the science behind what we thought was magic just a couple of decades ago. You can buy the book at folkloringlife.com, and if you would like a personalized dedication, just send me a message and I will make sure that happens. You can also get it in bookstores or on Amazon. If you do get it, it would really help me out if you could leave a review on Amazon. It helps me with visibility, which really helps with sales, and I would truly appreciate it. I would also love to hear any thoughts that you have on the book. If you'd like to continue the conversation about folklore and magic, find me at my school community, Folkloring Life. You can find links for the book, for my community, and a bunch of other stuff on my website, folkloringlife.com. Now, on to the episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Folkloring. And today I'm here with Oracle Hekataios. And Oracle is a high pretext in several initiatory craft traditions. He seeks to be a perpetual student of wonder. They are currently in their year in white in the Lukumi faith. He's an author of Strix Craft, Ancient Greek Magic for the Modern Witch. So welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Oh my gosh, Tracy, thank you so much for letting me be here today. I am really humbled and I'm excited for this, what I believe will be a very good discussion.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to it. But before we get into your book, your work, and all of the really interesting things about you, have you been folkloring lately? And if so, how?
I have been folkloring lately. I think I folklore all the time. I'm just a student. I love learning. And part of my folkloric practices include, little rituals here and there that I've inherited also from my Latino family, where we cook specific meals around New Year's in order to bring in the luck and drive out the bad. Things to dismiss the evil eye, things to move forward. And also, it's not just that, but it's also craft traditions, things I'm involved of in witchcraft. And we tell stories around the bonfire around winter solstice, and we reenact story. And I think those stories are how I folklore.
That's exactly the definition of folkloring. I love that. As for me, interestingly, what I was going to say is for the first time ever this year, I made black-eyed peas. So
Oh,
I had pomegranate and cabbage and black-eyed peas, which are from various traditions, but all good luck food for the new year. And I was pleasantly surprised. They're absolutely delicious. And it wasn't like some, handed down recipe. I went on Pinterest and found a recipe.
that's
And
awesome.
yeah, so delicious. I will 100% be making that again, and like not just on New Year's. Like it was very good. So we both did sort of New Year's things. So
We did, and I'm gonna be honest. I'm not allowed in the kitchen. The only time I'm allowed in the kitchen is if I'm gonna do like, some kind of kitchen ceremony or whatever. But other than that, I am kicked out. It is not my place. I do not cook. I let others do the good luck part, and that's it. Because my intentions will be chaotic. So try keeping the fridge door open, burning the water in the pot, and all these other things. So like, no, 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 we don't need chaos in the end of the year. We need order. So,
now, are you allowed in the kitchen at other times of the year?
The only time, not really. The again, the only time is when I sit down and eat. They're like, "We'll take care of it, we'll cook it, we'll be fine." And I'm like, "Well, can I help in any way? Can I help prepare the meal with intention? Can I do this? Can I do that?" And they're like, "We've got this. You can bless the food." All
All
right.
right. If you ever get to Chicago, I'm having you come over and we're going to cook together because food is love. Everybody's welcome in my kitchen. There's always something to do, and maybe you'll learn a little something, and you get your cooking more focused. Because really, what is cooking but a spell, right?
It is. It is. And in my family, we have to be very careful how we cook. My grandmother would not cook if she was in a bad mood.
Huh? I hear that.
She absolutely would not. She's like, no, because for her, it was what I call the alchemical process, where you have to think and your intentions have to be part of the laboratory of the kitchen. So all of it, because it's like you said, food is love, and I say that saying all the time, food is love, which is why, that oh, your plate's empty, here, let me refill it. Oh, your glass is empty, here, let me refill it. Not so much fun when it's moonshine, but everything else is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also it's when you're upset or angry, not only are you kind of not focused and you're bringing that energy to it, you also you don't think about the symbolism of, which way are
Hmm.
you stirring the food, or, what herbs are you putting in and what do they mean, and all of those kinds of things. So I hear that about, not cooking when you're upset. And I tend to make batch food. So if I'm like not feeling it and I'm just like and I love to cook. I adore cooking. I love being in the kitchen. I spend hours in there. But if I'm, sometimes you're just not feeling it or I'm too busy or whatever. So I've always got like something in the freezer that was cooked in the right mindset. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's interesting because that when I tell people, when I teach my students about correspondences, for example, which to me are not the end all be all, they are not. I'm not a correspondence witch. I am a relational witch. I believe in relationships with your spirits, with your ancestors, and with your deities, okay?
mhm.
So for me, you can have a book of correspondences, but I believe in actually hands-on, what does this herb feel to you? Not just your family recipe, but how does the sage feel? What are you adding to the tradition of sage? What are you adding to the tradition of thyme and oregano? That's something that I do teach, and I tell people, which is why my classes take place in the kitchen, around food. We'll eat. When the food's done, we'll talk about classes or even before, or we'll just have discussions. I do have formal papers that we do talk about and hands-on stuff, but most of our discussions take place around the kitchen table while we're eating.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. And it's sort of the way that I look at it when we're talking about our practice, our spirituality, the way I think about it is like every religion is a religion of one, because no matter what you're learning about what people came up with before, the correspondences, whatever, crystals, what they're attached to, you still come to those things through your biases, your learning, your experiences. And so, a blue feather might mean something different to you than it does to me. And
Absolutely. And this is part of dream work too, right? Part of dream work is navigating, which is something that the Greek, I'm going to use the word shaman, even though that's not what they were, but iatromantis, the Greek spirit workers, did in the temples of Asclepios, where people who were ill slept, they had a dream, they would wake up and tell the priests, or what was their dream, and the priest interpreted the dream according to that person, able to diagnose and give specific treatments. And I tell people all the time, like, don't get a dream book, because my dreams and your dreams, my symbols and your symbols. Like if my mother dreams something about snakes, she's thinking it's demonic. If I dream about snakes, it's wisdom.
absolutely. And because, all of the experiences you've had in life are informing it. And I do have the actor's nightmare. Do you know what the actor's nightmare is?
Yes.
Yeah, where it's the same as being like unprepared for a test or being like naked all of a sudden at school, where you're suddenly in a situation where you're not prepared, right?
Hmm.
Now, I worked in theater for over 10 years in like professionally. And then I had 8 years before that between high school and college. And
Okay.
so I was in theater for a long time. I've never in my life been in a situation where something happened, not even like I wasn't prepared to like be on stage and I didn't know my lines and all of these horrible things. Never happened to me. I've never like had anything go wrong that wasn't like immediately and calmly dealt with by the crew and all of those kinds of things. So there's no reason for me to be having that nightmare except for the fact that I have anxiety around being prepared and making sure I'm
Right.
ready for things. And so that's like, oh, okay. So, if that dream is a back door into my subconscious, it
Hmm.
the important part is not the actual pieces of the dream because they're going to be, weird and not real life and it's like somebody's your boyfriend but it's not a person you've ever known or whatever it is. But
Exactly.
yeah, but it's like, well, how do you interpret that? And even like if I'm interpreting a dream, it's going to be, if it was a dream a year from now or 5 years ago, I would interpret it completely different because I'm different, my life circumstance is different. And that's just, and that's what I think both dreams and divination are good for.
Very much so. I mean, the mantis was the dream because ma it comes from the Greek word manti or divine speak, the divination, divine speak. But the mantis was able to help somebody interpret, and like you said, it's at different stages of our lives. I always teach about the Hellenic Greek gates of horn and ivory when it comes to dreams. It was said that in the Odyssey, first in the Odyssey, that it was the first time that the idea appeared that there were two gates in the other world, gates of horn and gates of ivory. The gate of horn is the true dreaming, where you get visitations from spirits and deities and such, and prophecies. And then there's the gate of ivory, which is the gate of false dreaming or stress or subconscious or whatever. And, it's ruled over by Morpheus, the god of dreams, which I've done. I draw sigils, specific picturesque sigils, and one of them is to contact Morpheus in the dream time. But basically, yeah, I mean, everyone has their own horn and ivory that they're going to try and deduce what is factual and what is not. And navigating that can be a little difficult for some people. It's because people are like, I don't know. I see on the forums all the time. I had a dream. What does this mean? The first thing I tell people is, what does that mean to you? What do cardinals symbolize for you? When you think of a bird or a raven or a snake or a butterfly. And so we go from there to lead them in so that, or I do, to help them answer the questions. But if they really need something, then I say, okay, we're going to need to do a divination, and then that's a completely different art
Right.
to the dream world.
I'm really fascinated by the you said it's bone and ivory?
Horn and ivory.
Horn and ivory. Okay, because like I kind of wear two hats, right? I am a, magical practitioner, right? And but like and so I'm a believer in a lot of ways. I don't consider myself to be super woo, but there are things I believe in that a lot of people would roll their eyes at, and that's fine. I don't care. But
Hmm.
as a folklorist, right? Some of these things that we're talking about, like, does it matter as a folklorist whether or not you're astral projecting when you're dreaming, right? It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. What matters is what people believe, why they believe it, and what stories are they telling around it. So sort of my entire like practice has that same duality of, is it the true dream or is it the false dream where it's like your stress or whatever it is. And so I can look at it in both of those ways, knowing that I believe, but also feeling like it doesn't matter if it's true.
Hmm.
So that's such a great it's such great symbolism for me personally. And like my father's side of the family came from Greece, so I feel very connected to, Greek mythology. The first book I ever had was a Greek mythology book. The first like folklorish kind of book.
Yeah.
I certainly had, Dr. Seuss books before that, but
And I think you jumped on something really interesting because it's like it has to be valid for you. And part of my what I teach my students in esoterica is to journal. Practice journaling, and there's a template for ritual journal, exactly your blue book there, and then there is the your dream journal, which I say is more free flowing. But basically, what I teach is that if you are inspired by an experience, because to me, a culture, the occult, is experiential. There is dogma in certain traditions, but it's more experiential than anything. And I think once a person has an experience, they can write it down, but then over time they can look back on it like a scientific experiment and say, okay, this part was not valid. It did not impact me the way I thought it would be, but all of this is. And there is that's the way I train, so that way I can help people. It's worked for me. It works for me because it helps me to separate, even though maybe all true in a ethereal sense, obviously everything is true. At the same time, I think the word that I would use is valid.
Hmm.
What is valid in changing your life? What is valid in you growing as a human being? And what is valid as far as your journey is concerned? So, while everything is true, and I completely agree with that, I also adapt it to where we add validity to it.
Yeah, when I do dream journaling, I used to lucid dream all the time. Like every
Hmm.
single time I'd have a dream, it was a lucid dream. As it turns out, because of some chemical sensitivities that I have, there was a particular chemical that was like heightened in my body. And it was a chemical, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but that particular chemical, when it's higher in the body, you don't fall all the way asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so it fights your body like getting into that REM sleep and everything. So I used to remember it all the time. I loved it. And then I got my body a little more balanced, went to the allergist, got things fixed, and
Yeah.
it stopped happening. And so I I do kind of remember dreams, but I lose them very quickly because I'm not used to having to pay attention to them. So what I do is I grab my phone, which is by my bed, so I don't have to turn on the light or anything like that, and I just open up a voice note and I sort of stream of consciousness say everything I remember in that moment, and
Mm-hmm.
then like go back to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, then I can review it and be like, "Oh my God, I completely forgot about this dream." And so that's been really useful for me to capture the dreams. And then later when you're awake and you can, think about it instead of trying to capture it all in the middle of the night, that's the way I do it. But then of course I do the more formal, like regular awake, examining myself kind of journaling as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the chemical that you're referring to is melatonin, if memory serves.
No,
Um,
it's not melatonin. It was because that sort of helps relax you. If I had too much of that in my brain, I'd probably be
mhm.
sleeping really soundly. This was one that like fights it. It's like one of the chemicals that helps you wake up.
I think is it acetylcholine? I can't
Ah,
remember.
that might be it. Yes.
Acetylcholine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was melatonin. No, you're right. It's acetylcholine. Yeah, I'm going back to my organic chemistry days.
Uh, Hey man, bring the science to the magic. I love hearing about the science behind the magic because isn't like that's we know so much more now than we did, 100 years ago, 200, 600, and we're discovering things that used to be thought of as magic, and it's like, oh wait, there's real science behind that.
Yes, hypnotism was one of those. Certainly we have, self affirmations. We've got the idea of intention. We've got very little evidence on prayer and how it affects, but but there's a reason why medicine does encourage it as an adjunct to healing, because the patient has to be involved in their own healing, in their own intentions, in their own mind, in order for them to heal better. So there is evidence of all of that. I worked in medicine for some time, so a lot of that in organic chemistry and physics is really something that I'm into as a researcher in my background. And so I feel that even though it's been quote unquote demystified or explained, there's still mysticism to it because there's still an idea that science explains, but it doesn't dilute. And so I think we dilute if we say, oh, well, it can be explained, therefore it's not magic. No, the whole point is that even if magic can be explained, it still works. And so, you just have to put the work into it and the effort, because not everybody's a magician, not everybody's an occultist, not everybody's a witch. And even people who may be interested do not practice magic because they feel magic for various reasons. Some feel that it's akin to superstition, like some Reconstructionists do in the community, and others feel that it is something that they just feel like they can't do because they can't even conquer the first, or not conquer, that's the wrong word, but like master the first basic steps
Right.
because they feel like they don't have time or they need money. A lot of things that are should not be obstacles, but it makes it seem with commercialization.
Mhm. Okay, so you just mentioned some of the stuff, your science background and all of that. And we kind of glossed right over you at the beginning and we got excited about what we were talking about, which is great. But can you talk a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your path and the the work that you do? I want to get into your book for sure, and we're going to go into that in a little more detail later. But I want to hear about the different kinds of work you do and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I hate talking about myself. Let me just put it that. I think a lot of us do. And I hate to show a magical resume half the time. Like, it's very difficult for me to type out and say what I do. But I think I'm becoming more comfortable with it. So, yes, I'm absolutely excited to share that. So, I started out in neo-paganism back in the early 2000s. I'd say about 2004 is when I really started studying. And I read every book that I could on alternative spiritualities and the divine feminine for about 5 years before I was ready to pick up something and actually practice. Because I believe that if you're going to leave one faith and join another, that maybe you should learn as much as you can about it before doing something, you know?
Yep.
So after that time, the first thing that I was initiated into was Druidry, actually, the Order of Bardoids and Druids. And then after that, I was initiated into the Druid Order of Naturalists, which is more humanistic version of Druidry. So it kind of combines science with mysticism and helped me to understand more of humanist philosophy. And it really calmed me down in a time when I was still reeling from Christianity. I've made my peace with Christianity since then. I have no problem. Shortly after that, I got into Sicilian witchcraft, the training through a family, and that led me to understanding Hellenic. Decided to go to the Hellenic route because the Greek gods were more calling to me than Roman, although Sicilian is a mix, it's a syncretic island. And I think I've always had Hecate with me ever since I was 8 years old and I saw the movie Jason and the Argonauts. She's always been there in the background. I just didn't know what to do with her when I was in Druidry. I was like, okay, I'm in a Celtic path. What do I do? And then when I got into Sicilian and Mediterranean in general, she was there. She showed up and she's like, okay, I'm here. Now you have no excuse not to worship me. I
Hmm.
don't use the word work with yet because I had to devote myself to her first. I believe worship before work. So when I dedicated myself to Hecate on November 16, 2009, and as her priestex, and or at that time as her priest, because I didn't come out as non-binary at that time. And then when I did, so much opened up to me in the spirit world, and so much passion came, and I began to study Greek philosophy, pre-Socratic philosophy, workings, Greek magic, and stuff. And before I was initiated into Wicca, into several traditions of Wicca, I started my own temple, the Temple of Hecate, here where I live. And I had active members. I still have active members internationally that are part of the temple. And I still teach them. We still go through the things. It's an initiatory order. But I tell people that when they read the book, for example, the book is a summation of what they is taught as that can be shared outside of the tradition.
Okay.
And it's almost like a taste of what they could have even more. I ended up being initiated into several traditions of British traditional Wicca, which are lineaged traditions. And then recently I got into Lukumi, also known as Santeria. Now, the biography says I was in my year in white, which is true. My year in white just ended this summer.
Okay.
It just ended. So I'm a fully fledged Santero now. And that informs my practice a lot, both of them. I'm a very syncretic individual. I practice theocrasia, which basically means that the gods blend and paths blend. I don't, there's some certain things I separate,
Mhm.
but other things like the philosophies and the mysteries, they come together beautifully. And so I always take that into account. And I'm very grateful for my elders for teaching me that. And I call myself a crowned witch as a result.
Wow, that is quite the path. And the work, I mean, how many different places have you been initiated? Like, how many different traditions?
I have been initiated in about 8 different traditions. And then my biological father's side, who are 100% Huichol from Mexico, it's an indigenous tribe from Mexico. They have inducted me into curanderismo, Mexican healing tradition, considered folkloric in certain respects, but it's still a syncretic healing tradition combining Catholic symbols and indigenous practices. For some, not everybody.
Mhm.
But curanderis, I'm a seventh generation curandero now. And my final initiation in that path will take place once I can go to California or Mexico and take part in the deer hunt for peyote ritual.
Got it. So that's a lot of stuff that you've done and that you have learned I'm a little bit tired just hearing about all of that. Because I know that I'm taking a class in advanced magic right now, and
Hmm.
I got initiated into a coven last summer, and
Okay.
like that is it was a lot. It was a lot. It's all good.
Yeah.
I still need to go out and find my stang, but that's but it's cold. It's really, really cold here.
Yeah, right now it
Yeah.
is.
And I have not seen the white stag yet, so I have to wait until that happens. And I may go out with the person that sort of leads our circle and go look for the white stag. So, but yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of reading, it's a lot of studying, it's a lot of memorizing, which I am not good at.
Mhm.
And so I my hat is off to you. So
You
what?
know, I love spirituality. I've always loved it, and I've always just wanted to be a better priest to serve people. That's all I've ever wanted. And now living the vocation, because to me, initiation is a vocation, not just you're a witch or you're a santero. It's a living priesthood. It's a living vocation. And as a result, I'm also now taking full-time classes at Star King Seminary for a master's in divinity. So I just love learning. I love learning. And the more I learn, the more I can implement in what is witchcraft's love language, which is ritual.
So you teach classes. Do you teach classes online as well as in your kitchen?
I teach them online first for students who are seeking initiation over Zoom, especially the international students. You know, they need to be. I teach over Zoom, and I have little issue teaching over Zoom.
Mhm.
Initiations must be done in person always. But as far as classes are taught, yes, I do teach online over Zoom a lot, but they are limited currently to my students. If I teach outside classes, usually they are recorded on Zoom, but they're done at my shop that I work at.
Okay. Yeah, because like I want to like be on Zoom while you're in your kitchen eating and doing stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to I was just wondering if people can access you that are not local. And obviously they can. So if I'm not on a path to initiation, is it just like one-off classes or a series of classes that I can take that, but it's completely different from the path to initiation? Or is there some learning that even if I'm not on that path that I could get that students who are seeking initiation are learning as well?
So the answer is yes.
All right. That was
It's all the
definitive.
above, because part of the reason, like some people have said, well, you're a badge collector, you just want. No, if I was a badge collector, I'd be initiated, but I wouldn't pass it on. I believe in passing on what I'm taught.
Hmm.
So, whether it is specific skills like divination or candle magic, how I do it, or if in herbs, or if it is specific classes geared towards initiation, or a series or one-off that is going to educate you about specific subjects, that's what I do.
Yeah, I think that and my master's was heavily focused on adult education. And it's very different than the way children learn. And so I think that there are people who are just in it for the knowledge. And they're like, I want to learn more about this thing. I
Hmm.
think a lot more people, they know some stuff, right? Because everybody knows something everybody knows something that I don't, right? So I can learn from anybody, even if I'm there as an instructor. And I think that a lot of people are seeking out classes and
Hmm.
knowledge and that sort of thing because they've got a problem. There's a pain point that they need to resolve something.
Yes.
So it can be very specific. They want to be able to connect with, their goddess, or they want to be able to astral travel, or they want to, be more intuitive, or whatever it is that they're looking for. And, that's when people are putting in the real work. The people who aren't just pure like academic, I need to learn more. And there are certainly those people out there, and that's great. I am one of those people. But I think most people are looking for, how do I solve this problem? How do I
Yeah.
learn how to not have this issue in my life anymore? And I think that it's really great that you can provide a lot of that.
Yeah, I work towards it. Number one, I believe in philosophy, not in the modern Western sense, but in the sense that the pre-Socratics had coined it, the Pythagoreans and others had coined it, where it's, philosophia, which is basically chasing wisdom, love of wisdom. Wisdom is seen as the divine feminine, Sophia, a deity, and wisdom was considered at that point in time almost the equivalency of enlightenment, but in the sense of understanding the cosmos, because a lot of these philosophers were also early scientists in their own way, even though they were mystics at the same time. To them, science was mysticism.
Right.
And so it was a mystic approach. So wisdom is about understanding the natural world, understanding the cosmos, understanding the nature of the gods and the spirits, and then from there, being able to apply what they've learned and teaching the mysteries that they inherited, whether it was mathematics, whether it was cosmology, whether it was spirit work, local land spirits, whatever the case may be. And a lot of pre-Socratics have done a lot. Like, for example, we have Democritus, and Thales of Alexander, and we have others that were like, the theory of atoms, the Earth is round, and such, traveling to the Arctic Ocean and the Arctic area and coming back, mapping everything. So I believe in wisdom chasing, and as a result, I also learn from my students. I don't stick to my own paradigm. I don't like living in an echo chamber. So my students, when we sit around the kitchen table, we will debate. I don't just discuss. It's not just me talking. I'm like, what are your thoughts? What are your things on the book, on this book? When we start to discuss craft philosophy, how do you see that? And they may say, well, I don't believe this, but I believe why? And then we debate and discuss accordingly. And that's how we all learn.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to, as I'm sort of developing my I brand, I don't really want to call it a brand, but as I'm developing, I decided to open a community to talk about stuff like this. And
Hmm.
so that's what I'm doing instead of the old path where people are putting out content and it's great
Yeah.
and people are learning, they're doing their podcast or they're, doing classes, whatever they're doing, and they're on Patreon and they're like, if you want extra material, pay at this level. And if you want even more, and so, and that's about gaining an audience to me. But what I wanted was a community because that's where conversations like you're talking about happen, right? When it's people feeling like everybody's bringing something to the table and when you are going through classes like that, you have such a different experience. You're not delivering like, I'm going to deliver this class to, this group of people for this time, and then the exact
Hmm.
same experience for this group of people for this next time period. And when it happens like that, I mean, it's magic, right? Where everybody brings something in, and so it's each time is specific to those people coming together at that time and talking about those topics, and you're, leading them, but they're full participants. And so that's why I think community is important, particularly when you're talking about folklore and magical thinking and all of that, because that's what it's about, right? It's about the
Yes.
community and it's about
Agreed.
the shared beliefs, the shared practices, the shared stories. And that's folklore, really. And so I think that that's such a good model because it's what do they call it? Um, terroir. Terroir it's a French word. Yeah, and it's for
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, for like wine, right? And
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
it's like the weather that year, how the grapes did, what the soil makeup was,
Yep.
how many days there were rain and sun, and like what were the exact barrels that they were
Yep.
aged
All
in.
of those are factors. Yep.
Yep. And so that's why wine is different every year,
Hmm.
right? And they go, oh, this was a great vintage, this year.
Yep.
And that's yeah, that's why. It's not just some like random happenstance. They take very careful care of how they mix those things. And then it's an art. Then like at that point, whatever happens happens, right? The weather is the weather. They contest the soil and try and change it, but it all comes together, and they're like the person in charge, the instructor, and they are taking all of those different factors just like you do with all your students because they've
Hmm.
all got something different. And I'm sure, and when I teach, I think like I'm lucky, man. I'm learning more than they are, you know?
Well, and that's what it is, right? Because we all have time to digest what we've learned that day
Hmm.
or, that specific time period. And then we come back and we're like, what did you think? How are things? Let's follow up. And like you said, when you're using the wine analogy, which is perfect, very Dionysian, who I'm also devoted to as a priest. I think the cauldron of ingredients that come together within a group
Yes.
help to, as a facilitator, I mean, because that's just what I am, as a facilitator, inviting people into the process, I
Right.
think is healthier than a dynamic where a teacher just tells people what to do, hands out worksheets. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I guess it works for some covens, some groups. But for me, I can't work that way. And I've had to adapt actually, because I was professorial in a way.
Hmm.
But then I had to adapt and say, no, no, not everybody's going to learn the way I do. Many people are hands-on, some people are auditory, some people are visual. So certainly adapting, and some people are dyslexic. They can't read all the books.
Right.
So what we do is, a lot of groups, they'll have you read a book and then do a book report, kind of like, what did you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. But for
Cool.
me, we read the books and we discuss it like a book club. We're like, and because there may be things that somebody with dyslexia missed, which is, or even somebody who doesn't have dyslexia, and it helps to learn and foster a shared environment. And by doing that, we bring our individual myths together and our stories and we weave a narrative that helps. helps create a living organic thing. And I think the thing you talk about where we pass down the customs and stories and traditions, I call that orthopraxy, right practice, where you're passing down customs, traditions, stories, narratives down through the line, down through the lineage versus orthodoxy, which is what many religions, some religions have, I shouldn't say many, but some religions have, correct dogma, correct teaching, correct opinion, where you may have things that are passed down,
Right.
but you're told from the pulpit how to believe and how to think and how to interpret that thing rather than allowing yourself to add to the living narrative that an orthopraxic tradition can follow.
That's really interesting because I often sort of talk about in folklore, it used to be people were telling their stories in their village, or maybe there was a traveling folklorist. And so there
Hmm.
were many, many versions of lots of different stories. And you'd see themes and you'd see stories pop up in different places. And it was,
Absolutely.
yeah, always. But then at a certain point, we started getting folklorists. Like, the Grimm brothers and all
Yep.
of that. And they were trying to sincerely record these stories, but in recording them and writing them down, of course it came through their lens, you know.
Yes.
And so they recorded it with that, focus, but it also became the experts. Then it even sort of morphed again later when we started getting Hollywood involved and big
Hmm.
blockbuster movies and Disney,
Yes.
and then like the Disney stories, the little mermaid who remains unidentified in what color she is.
Hmm.
Or, the like Cinderella was a brutal, grim story. And in
Yes.
the version that we were taught as we were growing up, it was, this sort of sweet little thing, and the fairy comes, and it's sort of hard at the beginning, but then everything works out perfectly, except the sisters are disappointed, right? Like that was the story we got. So then there was just an authority, and we got got the same story. But now
Yeah.
with the internet, we now have the ability to start telling our own stories to each other. And
Absolutely.
and that I think is great because now we're getting different variations. We're getting different versions. And people who are in diaspora, right? When you tell a story, you might bring a story with you, right? Your people might have brought a story with you, but then it
Hmm.
starts to adapt to where you land.
Yes.
And I think that the way that you're sort of looking at that is the same. When you started studying, there was nobody around to teach you. You were getting books, right?
Exactly.
And when you get a book, it seems very, especially when there was no one else to talk to about it, seems very like important and impressive. And so you believe a lot of it. And then you hear like, oh no, that person didn't know what they were talking about, or they just made that up.
Yes.
I think that now that we have so much more options for us, now, many of the options on the internet are bad. We
Yeah.
don't know when we're getting AI. We don't know
That's
this.
true.
Yeah. I mean, you can sort of tell, but not always, right? And you don't know if you're getting bad information and you have
Hmm.
to, really like dig in. But when you talk to another person, you can hear what their expertise is and what they know, and you can share your expertise. And so now magic is kind of going the same way, right? That we were able to let go of the experts on high and start sharing with each other. The way I always think of it is like, hey guys, it's all made up anyway. Just because somebody made
Yeah.
it up a long time ago doesn't mean it's more important than what we're making up now.
Exactly.
I love the way that you approach that.
And I think, it's all the same story, different versions. All of them are true, as it was said in Pirates of the Caribbean, to quote Emmett. But, I think one of the things is that we have in the United States specifically, we are cut off from ancestral stories in Europe and the Mediterranean or China or other places. We are completely cut off. And some people debate about assimilation versus adaptation. And there's these two different fountains of debate that happen in minority communities and immigrations that come over. And how do we survive a country while at the same time keeping traditions alive? And some places, some people that come over will not teach the native language to their children. They will not teach them their customs. They will not do anything. Or unless they find their own communities in major cities like, Little China, Little Mexico, Little Ireland. And I think that that's a shame in some ways. And we lose a lot of basic folklore because of for me, what's called the toxicity of assimilation. But that's when generations are lost and they're like trying to, and we're like, and they're like, what is a story that I can hold on to? What is something that I can hold on to? So they seek out religions that are closest to their ancestral lineages or even other religions
Right.
that can help them weave mythology together. And it's true that everybody talks through their own lens anyway. Like Walter Evans Wentz, Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries, he tried to do this scholarly thing, collecting fairy folklore throughout Ireland, and it's still through his biased lens.
Right.
And we have to remember that our Protestant background our Christian background in the United States has taught us to believe that experts write things. If it's not written, it is not true. I mean, we make a distinction between nonfiction and fiction, but even then, there's a saying, truth is stranger than fiction. So we have these proverbs, we have these sayings that reinforce that the written word is sacred over oral traditions, which are allowed to change. And people want to, like Carl Linnaeus, they want to Linnaean and categorize everything according to a certain thing that makes sense to Western minds. But it doesn't work that way. Our brains are more fluid, our experiences are more fluid and varied. And I think a lot of our practices, like neo-paganism and others, to a certain extent, are welcoming these different narratives. There are still some people who don't understand the box that scholars have put certain myths into, like they'll say the Greek pantheon, the Roman pantheon, this or that, not realizing that many cultures do what's human and they blend a lot and they borrow and they share and they delete. And so, like like the bards of Ireland or the bards of the Mediterranean, where the troubadours of France who would travel singing songs and telling stories, everything was so different depending on the region because they had to reach their audience. And we see this today in narratives with comics and with comedians and other people who go to different countries, different parts of the country, and they'll weave a narrative that fits the audience.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
they can make an impact with the audience and connect with the audience, but they're not going to do the same thing in another city.
I think that you teed me up, man. That is the perfect lead-in to talking about your book. Okay, so the book is Strix Craft, Ancient Greek Magic for the Modern Witch, right? And it's exactly what you're talking about. And I love the way the book is set up because you talk about the history of it, right?
Hmm.
And then you start to talk about, the different herbs and all of these things that relate back to specifically Greek magic. But then
Hmm.
it's, how does it work today? Because there's so many books out there. I mean, websites and books and downloadables that are like, here's how you do magic. And it's
Yeah.
just, it's not anything that is rooted in specific tradition. It's just like it's so mixed up together that it's just like, oh, this herb means this and that means
Yeah.
that. And I like that you get into the Greek historical magic and historical meanings, but then you say, but you live in this world and don't know where you live in the world, but it might not be Greece. And so how do you take that, which again, we talked about this earlier. That is the essence of folkloring, right? How do you take it from the history while respecting the history, understanding the history, because that's key when you adapt things, right?
Yes.
You understand where things came from. It's not just some rando on the internet saying, oh, a garnet means this.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of that is again based in science because there are certain minerals in different crystals and that kind of thing. And herbs have certain effects on the body, whether it's
Yes,
medicinal, and they have certain shapes that tie in, like, they always talk about a walnut is good for the brain because it looks like that.
because doctrine of signatures is what
Yeah.
it was called medieval times. Yep.
And I understand all of that, but then you have to adapt it to your daily life. And maybe, you can't do something at dusk because you're not home from work yet. Or you can't do something at dawn or midday because your kids need attention or whatever it is. And I feel like you really kind of bridged that gap. So maybe just talk a little bit about what you are doing with the book and what you want the reader to experience and come away with.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you for those accolades. I appreciate it. I try. My thing is that there is no monolith itself to even Greek mythology. We have different stories depending on A, the mystery cult, B, the philosopher, C, the city, state, and region.
Hmm.
And so those three factors really affect from the motherland to the colonies. And the colonies, for example, in Magna Graecia or Greater Greece, which was in southern Italy and Sicily, have completely different, more ecstatic approaches to the gods than do the ones in mainland Greece. And even in mainland Greece, the most evidence we have written down is from Athens. So we're not even talking about Sparta or Lacedaemon. We're not even talking about Thebes. We're not or Thrace. We're not even talking about other places. And so Thebes is in Egypt, excuse me. So we're looking at different aspects. And what I teach is that the gods are the land and the land are the gods. The gods manifested in different areas in Greece. They all had their own independent stories depending on where they lived. So we have Zeus of Ethiopia. We have Zeus of the mountain of Lycia, the wolf Zeus. We have the Zeus of Olympus. We have the Zeus of the household or the cupboard, Zeus Ctesios, but it's all Zeus. And polytheism is like that. Polytheism allows for plural ideas, diversity of thought, poly, and it also allows for a diverse lens that helps us to capture how do the gods manifest where we live. And so it keeps a tradition alive. For example, in Florida, I worship Zeus Flortina or Zeus of Florida because we are Lightning Alley in the world. We have the most lightning strikes that happen, especially during the wet season. And so to me, Zeus is very palpable here, and so that's whom I worship, but he's seasonal. He's a seasonal Zeus. During the spring or dry season, I worship Zeus of the cupboard, Zeus Ctesios. And so there's different manifestations of the gods, but it's all about where you live. For example, in witchcraft, traditional witchcraft or Wicca, a lot of the books you'll read on Wheel of the Year have northern climate meanings. But where we live in Florida with our unique environment, or where you live in California or Nevada or wherever you live, you have to adapt.
Hmm.
Humans are creatures of evolution and adaptation. And I strongly believe that from my science background. I strongly do believe stories change, but they have a foundation.
Right.
So to go into your questions, I feel as if I really want the reader to know that they can create a living tradition where they live based on this, that they're not stuck romanticizing Greece, even if they live there, but even the Greece of today is different from the Greece of the past. And so, how the traditions live, that's what's important. Surviving and thriving and adding your story, adding your experiences of the gods. I'm going to give you an example of something. In Lukumi, we talk about there's a process of initiation that takes place where the human being takes on, they're called crowned. They take on an initiatory status based on a specific orisha or spirit that rules what's called their head or the crown of their head. Basically, the head is like a throne, and there's a specific spirit who sits on that throne guiding their life. Okay. but the vessel is prepared, and in certain instances, like in transpossession, the throne Orisha will come down, inhabit the body of the person, and manifest. But that Orisha has different, what's called different paths, which in scholarly terms, many of the Greek gods, Roman gods, many of the deities around the world have epithets. Okay, the word epithet is just another word for another way to describe a path or specific manifestation of that deity. Like I was giving examples of Zeus, different epithets. So he has different paths. So, for example, you will not have the same Orisha manifest the same, possibly the same way in two different humans. At the same time, those humans are living stories. For example, we have stories in Lukumi called patakis, which would be myths in the Greek version, in Western versions, myths, but they're called patakis. In a pataki, there's contradictory information about, just like in myths, there's contradictory information about what deity does what, who does this part. But I believe, and some of us do believe, that they were based on crowned humans who interacted with each other and were the manifestations of those spirits. So my godfather, for example, he is crowned by one Orisha named Mochosi. I am Obatala. When we sit down and discuss questions and answers, there may be a future generation that goes back. There's a story about Obatala and Ochosi sitting down and having questions and having philosophical debates.
Right. I think that that is where a lot of like these kind of myths are actually based in things that happen, and then, they grow over time and they morph.
They do. And so the fascination here is that in the story of the book, Strix Craft, even the mythology of the Strix, of our path,
Mhm.
is different. And our central figure is the goddess Nyx, the star goddess. And so when we talk about everything comes from her, when we're talking, it's a modern innovation that touches on ancient precedents, and there's footnotes in the book that tell you where the myths are based on and why I justify those stories. But my story is different because it takes on a modern cosmological bent that we understand about the cosmos, rather than just saying, Homer said there was chaos and darkness and this and that. No, that was Homer's understanding, but he's not the end all be all of Greek mythology.
Right. So we talked about the history, the mythology, talked about the gods that are adaptable. You get different versions depending on who you are, where you are, all of that. And then we talked about some of the different tools and what you are using in your work and what it meant in the roots of the ancient Greek magic. But I do want to point out that then toward the end of the book, you start to talk about actual practices and how
Hmm.
people can translate all of this into their modern life. So you give them the background, you give them like, here's how some of these tools and herbs and all of that work. And then you talk about things like healing magic and binding and hexing and communing with the dead, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot of practical stuff in the book too. You just give the background through this particular prism. And I think that gives people the basis to actually say, yeah, I'm going to adapt all of this stuff to my practice. And that,
Absolutely.
yeah, gets back to people making it work for them. And so I think that the book, not only is it really interesting to learn a very specific tradition, but that it's much broader than what
Hmm.
we were led to believe. And then we learn about the things that you use and what those things sort of meant in that tradition. But then you say, okay, and now here's what you do. And it's not just in a, okay, here's a spell.
Yeah.
Here's a thing that you do to talk to the dead. And here's a bunch of different spells for hexing, right? You talk about it and you talk about what it means, some of the stories behind it, and then how to do it. Not here's a recipe of what to do. So it empowers people again, and I think this fits in with your teaching style. You're empowering people to get the knowledge they need, that, and it's good knowledge. You're solid, and this is like such a well-researched book. And when any of you read it, you're gonna be like shocked at how many citations there are, and the good quality citations. So I think that this is a really practical book as well. You keep bridging these gaps, right? So you get the scholarly history, you get sort of the basic facts behind it, and then you get here's how to do it, right?
Right.
And there are some like little like okay, here's a chant or here's but it's not that like here's a big book of 1,000 spells, right?
Correct.
These are Greek spells. Here's what you do, and that's it. And say this chant, and light these candles, and do this, that, and the other thing. And so I think that this is a book that empowers people.
Mm, yeah, very much. I mean, that was my goal. I wanted to write it like a grimoire, from beginning to end. And the practices that are at the in the second part of the book really aren't, like you said, they're not just blank. It's not like, all right, here's a spell that you can do for this. I explain why,
Yes.
explain where it comes from. Even in the chapter on love magic, people in the West have a lot of Westerners have a problem with that, but I explain why it's in there. And so magic empowers. Magic is strength. Magic is what many people today, in the past and today, use to fight back for their lives, to
Yeah.
claim their lives,
Yeah.
and to thrive. Because when all else is said and done, we need to live.
Yeah.
And so, in that spirit, is why I wrote those spells, why I adapted a lot of techniques from ancient Greek magic
Hmm.
and made it modern to where, and modernize a lot to where it's adapted. Again, there's that word adaptation. It's adapted to modern day audiences.
Yeah.
And I really want people to know that when they're practicing communing with their ancestors, when they're about to hex somebody, when they're about to bind somebody, when they're about to do a healing spell or whatever you case, you know why you're doing it. You know what's behind it. You know the story, and you can execute it accordingly, according to the ethos that I teach. Now, if your ethos is different, that's fine. I just have to speak my piece. But at least the reader, will know the ins and outs, that it's not just do this, do that. No. And then you also get in the herb chapter, there's myths attached to each herb that's chosen. For example, not it's toxic, but aconite, is attached to the story of Kerberos, where Heracles drags him out of the underworld and he throws up and there's aconite. But as long as there can be a story attached, you can figure out the correspondence on your own.
Yeah, and I think that's so great because a lot of times we just get lists, like I say, we get lists of here's the correspondences. And there's no context. And the stories, even more so, provide the context. And I think that that will really help people because once they understand what it's rooted in,
Hmm.
and it's not just like, oh, I have to memorize what mullein is good for or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that it helps people to say, here's what I'm going to take from this, and here's how I'm going to move it into my life. And I think that
Hmm.
it's important because if you can't understand the roots of what you're using or doing, they are much less powerful, in my opinion. Or if you're like learning something, right?
Hmm.
And you hear it and you write something down and you do a bunch of different things and you go, I'm going to learn a little more about this part, right? It's a whole different experience than just memorizing stuff by rote.
Yes.
And when you just memorize stuff, you might be able to spit it back, but you can't fully experience it because you don't understand it. You know what, again, you know what it is, but you don't have that underlying context.
Exactly. And I'm a person who asks a lot of why. which is why, I excelled at science so much because I was like, why, even from when I was a kid. My father was like my stepfather, but I call my father because he raised me, but he would be like, go look it up and then you come back and tell me. This is in the days before Google when we had hardbound encyclopedias. So it was my dad's way of telling me to shut up and just go away. But he fostered a lot of my curiosity. And I really want people also to take away the fact that this book can foster their own curiosity, that
Yes.
they can learn more, that they can ascribe and hold accountable a lot of the learning that they can do by asking a simple question. TFYQA, think for yourself, question authority. And when they question and they ask, and if they're not getting a reason that fits with them, find the reason. Find out why. Look back at the history, respect the history. But again, history is not static. Make your own.
Okay, so before we wrap up, where can people find your book, your other work? How do they track you down?
So they can track me down on Instagram. For example, I'm under Oracle, Oracle, underscore Hekataios, Hekataios, Oracle underscore Hekataios. They can also find me on Facebook under Oracle Hekataios. It is a public profile, so they should have no problem finding it. So those are the two places. You can also email me. My email is oracle dot Hekatios, Hekatios at gmail.com.
And we could put all these links in the show notes. And they can get your book through your publisher.
Crosscrow. Crosscrow Publishing is the book that Strix Craft is gone through, and I am very grateful for them. And I've even submitted an anthology was published in December, known as World Magic, where I submitted an article about my journey in Lukumi. And so I'm looking forward to audiences as well reading that. There's a bunch of other great authors in there from different perspectives, but different world magic perspectives. But I'm proud of the one that I submitted for them.
And again, all those links will be in the show notes. So wherever you get your podcast, you will be able to see those right away. All right. Well, before we say goodbye, do you have any final thoughts for listeners?
Continue to have an adventure in storytelling.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Oracle, for taking the time today to sit down with me. This was really fascinating. I went down a lot of paths that I didn't
Yeah, we
expect. So,
did. We did. Thank you, Tracy, so much. I really enjoyed this.
as always, thank you for listening to Folkloring. If you have any questions or comments or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Blue Sky, Facebook, or Instagram. Other places you can find me are at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent, or creating folklore-inspired games at madmenandheroes.com. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep the traditions alive. And I hope that wherever you are, folklore is making your life more magical.